Hey y'all, it's Sarah, and today I'm working on a bundt cake. I'm going to be using my Jello mold. I have a separate mold that I'll share with you in case you haven't seen that video. I found this at a store called Daiso, and I think it was like $1 and some change. It's a chocolate mold, and you can see it's got several different shapes. I did one to the side. I haven't decorated it yet, but here's one of them. It's super cute. And I want you to see that this has a more cake-like texture, and you can feel this kind of cake-like texture. It's completely hard. You can hear it. It's completely hard. But I want to do it with the Jello mold shape and not just use straight resin, so it ends up looking more like a Jello mold. I don't want to do that, so I'm going to be doing it so it looks more like cake. And you can do it in whatever colors you want to. If you wanted to make a red velvet cake or a chocolate cake, just depending on which resins you add into it and whether or not you add a little extra pigment. I am going to be using my little flower here. You can see that. And let's talk about what that is. I'm also going to be using some clear resin, and this is my secret ingredient. It's just household kitchen baking soda. I have a container here next to me that I keep in my craft room for things like this. But that's what's in my little bowl. And I took a little cheat in order to make sure that I had enough to fill my little mold. I have kept the insert for my mold so that it would maintain its shape and didn't get bent out of shape in any form. And rather than getting powder residue into this mold, I measured my baking soda out through this and just dumped it in my little bowl and started sifting through to make sure I don't have any little lumpies. And a lot of that'll work its way out when you start mixing things together, but you don't want any kind of lumps in there. It'll show up in your cake or the texture of your bundt cake. So let's get started. I am just using one of the containers, and I'm gonna toss in my baking soda. If you want it colored, you can throw in pretty much any color. I'm going to spin my island around here really quick. Let's see if I can spin it around. So you really, given all the color variations that Miniverse has, you really could go in and have chocolate. You could have red velvet, you could have strawberry cake, you could do any of these. If you want something a little more on the vanilla lines, you might want to go with some of the yellow tones, or you can just use it as it is and chalk it at the end, which is probably what I'm going to do for this particular one. That way you can see what the actual results doing it this way is, and then you can choose from there if you want to mix some of your resin color. So I'll just be using the clear, and then I'm going to chalk mine up. So you can see I've got most of the lumps out. It's not that hard to do. You just kind of tap those little lumps out. Because this little lid will not sit still, I'm cooking on the floor today, basically. This is just clear, and I'm going to start with a little at a time and then add more as I go. I just don't want to have it overly moist, or it won't have a matte finish. It'll end up being on the shinier side of resin. And I'm just taking a popsicle stick to stir this around because I want to smush into that baking soda, and you can kind of see it'll start lumping together. So it's going to take a while. You essentially have to knead this. It is very tempting to reach in and do that with your fingers, but I recommend you don't, because even if you have no adverse reactions to resin, you can develop one with too much contact with resin, I always recommend keeping some rubbing alcohol nearby or alcohol wipes nearby. Clean your hands off frequently. If you already have reactions, you might want to use some kind of protective glove. I've seen that occur in the nail world for people that didn't have reactions for many years, can suddenly develop one. And it definitely looks like I will likely need to add more. But don't jump the gun. Keep working it and working it. Don't jump the gun on adding more resin just yet. You want to do your best. And you can see it's starting to kind of work its way in. So you're just going to keep doing this until you get basically a dough lump. Okay, so you can see I've got it pretty well mixed. This is kind of how the mixture ends up looking. You don't want it super moist or you'll end up with a shiny cake. And the whole point of doing this was to not have something that was shiny and resin-like. So this is pretty much a decent consistency, and you're going to pack it down into your mold. So that one should be, it's starting to want to ball up like that as I do it. Now remember, I have not added any resin or any resin color to this or any pigments to this. So I'm getting a fully bright white look, and I'll be able to chalk that. I wanted you to see what the natural state of this without any color in it would kind of look like. And I'm just packing it really well down in there. So I want it to get in all those little bumps in my bundt cake so that they're all nice and round at the top. And hopefully, I did spill a little as I was working at it, and I'm afraid I might have spilled a little too much, but we're going to work with it anyway because I don't want to make more at this point. So I'm trying to use this to flatten the bottom out so we've got a good flat surface bottom for your bundt cake to sit on. And this might work a little better for me if I sat it on the counter. Oh, look, I still got a little in there. Let's go ahead and scoop that out. Waste not, want not. I still don't know if that's enough to fill it entirely, but I happened to let my cup roll before I had it all mixed in, and it did knock out some of my baking soda. So I'm just going to keep working my way and flattening that. You definitely want to clean up around the sides a little bit. If you fill it all the way, you'll have a much easier time, because when you fill it all the way and pack it in there, you can just take your little tool, whatever you're using, popsicle stick in this instance, and slide it all the way across the top of there and clean off any excess so that you get nice clean edges. But since mine is not packed as full as I would like it, I've got to work at it a little. Fortunately, this little popsicle stick fits perfect down in those curves. And I can really get close and pack that down. So I want to get it super tight in there. I believe I've got it in there pretty good. I'm going to clean up the edge of this with a little rubbing alcohol and a Q-tip, just to make sure. Especially before I cure it, I don't want anything to really stick to my mold in those spots. I'm going to try to flip this over and see. Right now it looks like there's snow packed down in there. If you look at it. So I'm going to run this. Really, it only takes about once under my nail lamp. I'm going to try it in my handy dandy oven. I've got it there in my oven. I'm going to see how well it works in here. Considering in my nail lamp, and it's a really cheap nail lamp, the one I keep in here, it was like a $5 nail lamp, so not a major investment. It only takes 1 60-second run for it to harden, and it took 2 when I used this one, because this one is not see-through. So it took 2, and what I did, weirdly enough, and it actually worked, is that I ran it the first time, went to pop it out, and noticed that it was still wet down deep inside of the mold, like down in there. It was still wet. So since the bottom was already hardened, I flipped it over and still ran it through the light, and somehow it did manage to cure it even through the silicone. But this silicone is fairly thin, even though it's got a color to it, it's fairly thin, so it worked out with that one. It shouldn't take as long in the clear Jello mold one. Okay, it looks like it should be finished. Let's pop this out and find out how it did inside of this oven. And it sounds like it's hard. So let's find out. Oh, it sounds like it's hard. Let's see how this pops out. So what you're seeing fall off is the little edges that I didn't quite get cleaned off. Oh, that's pretty cute. And I don't know how well you can see with it being white. Okay, there is my finished bundt cake as far as the cake itself. Now, if I want to take this a little further, and you can see when I added color to it, to the resin, that was a brown, and I only added a few dots of the brown. You can see this one's very white. I'm bringing out some pastels, some basically artist chalks. And I'm going to hit it with a little bit of a yellow color. So this almost looks like an eyeshadow palette. And you can use eyeshadow as well if you wanted to. You can see this is the color that I'm using, this kind of a little bit golden color. And I'm going to try to do this where you guys can see it. Maybe you can start to see the texture. Let's slide that out of the way. Spin that around. I'm tossing in a little bit of a brown color too, so it looks like it cooked a little differently all over. And I may not do as much to the top since I was going to glaze that anyhow. So I'm just going to really rub that in there. And you can probably start to see some of that texture at this point. I prefer the colored resin look, and especially if you have some spare resins. And it did not take much of the chocolate resin added to the other one to get that beigey light colored cake color. So you can kind of see. Even that looks pretty cool on its own. I'll clean my little mess here. So because I do the weird things that I do, I'm coming in, I've shared this before, these are Dollar Tree furniture scratch markers that usually come in a 3-pack, and I really like the light color out of, they've got several, they always look a little different, the style always looks a little different. Sometimes it looks like this, and then they've got this more generic looking one, but the light color always ends up looking pretty much like the crisp edges of things, or the cooked edges of things. It's almost that just right color. So down at the bottom of mine, I might come across and make that a little slightly darker, just to give it a little something more. You could do something similar. I did it with my chalk, but you could go down in those creases with a little extra color to darken those up a little bit. So I'm just tapping that on, and I'll use my finger to rub some of it down and rub some of it in, so that there's a little bit variation in that. So maybe you can see. Let me put it back on this white tray, and you can kind of see how those edges now look a little more up and baked, if you will. I kind of dig it with the white top just like that. Let's try it. I'm not gonna go too crazy with this one because I can make plenty other ones. So with the white top like that, I just decided I'm gonna set it on some wax paper so that I can allow the clear to drip down, but you could do other colors at this stage. And I'm just going around the top, and I am going to guide this along a little bit with a paintbrush where I can kind of control that resin, that drip. This would probably look great with one of the white resins, like maybe the sour cream or one of those. So where I got this little extra goop there, I'm going to bring it over to this side and glaze this down. This would be a cute time to add, if you've got any of the mini verse sprinkles and things like that. That might be kind of cute. This almost gives me flan vibes. So I'm going to take it off of this one little piece of wax paper so that where I have all that spill right there, it doesn't harden. I'm also bringing in, if you caught the video of my DIY herbs and stuff, this is what this is. And it is teeny tiny. I don't know if you can see that. I'm going to sprinkle it on almost like sugar. You could probably use your salt for this, but I'm doing it like a sugar sprinkle. I have other colors actually that I could. Oh, let's do that. Let's do that for fun. I've got other colors. I've got red and green also. So I'm going to do that. Well, here I am fibbing to you guys. When I did my little kitchen remodel, undoubtedly I did not put those back in yet, the red and green, so I'm not entirely sure where I put them. So we're just doing the sugared version of this, and I'm going to run it through the light one more time. Okay, so there's my finished, really, really plain, simple one. You can see it is nice and hardened now. I still think I want to glaze this one, and I may almost just do it the same and just glaze it over the top. But maybe I can spin this around and you can see how that ended up turning out. It really does, it kind of remind me of flan. I do prefer it, to be honest, with the pigment mixed in, but you don't have to. You can always color it later. Before you add any more resin, you can add color to it, and then the resin helps seal that color in. But this is what I ended up with. I think it's super cute. I have a feeling that I'm going to have a baker's rack full of different variations of these, and it's super fun to be able to do, to have some kind of little holiday cake with every little meal that you put out, or every scene that you try to create or display. You could have a matching holiday cake to go with it in all kinds of colors and flavors. But this is what I wanted to share with you and show you the texture and how fun that is without it actually being just a Jello mold or just a Jello kind of look. You can see my mold is fine. I might want to rinse it with a little, spritz it with a little alcohol, and I usually do that after I use any of the molds anyway. But that's all I got to share. I hope you had fun. I hope you saw something you might like or an idea that triggered something, and I will see you guys soon. Bye, y'all.